Hi, I'm Tracy, and in this video I want to bring back and develop an old character of mine that I used to draw a lot in high school instead of paying attention in class. And hopefully I can inspire you to do the same, or to even design a totally new character. Here are a few digital concepts of the character from a few years ago that I will be taking inspiration from. When working on an OC, I usually follow these tips. First, world building and story. It's important that we have at least a little bit of information about the world in which our character will live in, since it impacts the design. Here is the map of the magical abilities of the world. 90% of the population are ordinary people, born without abilities and forced to live under the rule of those gifted with power. Most citizens spend their lives confined to the regions they were born into. Over generations, resentment has grown. Many ordinary citizens see the gifted not as protectors, but as dangerous elites born with unfair power. Those born with crystal abilities are connected to one of the four elemental crystals: earth, air, fire, and water. Each elemental crystal governs its own region of the world and is ruled by powerful leaders who can channel the energy of their element. At the very top stand the two royal crystals, the light and dark crystal, balancing the forces of creation and destruction, order and chaos. Some believe they maintain peace between the regions, while others think they are the true reason the world remains divided. To the powerless masses, the crystals live above them like gods. And finally, here comes our character Era, who was born a peasant in the Earth District. However, one day a magical event gives her powers, thus pushing her to the top, as she is now a light crystal because of her new abilities. Which apparently becomes a problem for everyone, but we'll talk about this later on in the video. Okay, now that we have that one out of the way, it's time for phase 2, exploration sketches and references. Here we get the feel of who our character is. Going back to Era's childhood, here's a sketch of her and her mom showing how important their connection is. Creating interaction sketches helps make your characters feel more real and believable. It shows how they act around other people, and it helps us to figure out the character dynamics and how they fit into the world around them. Before continuing with the sketches, we first need to choose the main materials. Since I'm designing Era at the beginning of the story, while she's still living in the Earth District, her clothing should reflect both her environment and her way of living. That's why I'll focus on natural materials such as leather, wood, linen, and wool. These resources are easy to find in the Earth District and help reinforce her strong connection to nature. These exploration sketches are inspired by both the materials I've chosen and Era's day-to-day life as a hunter, which is why elements like her weapon and utility bag are important parts of the outfit. At this stage, I'm not rushing the process. Instead, I'm exploring different ideas and following the designs that feel most true to the character. To better understand Era's character, I wanted to go back to her childhood and illustrate her before the accident that gave her abilities and before the loss of her mom. At this stage, she is deeply connected to her roots and fully belongs to the Earth District. Her design draws inspiration from feminine silhouettes, soft fabrics, and traditional Eastern European clothing, helping to add cultural identity to her region. She is dressed much like the other women in her village, emphasizing that she is still one of them. This contrast is important because while some colors and elements remain in her later designs, she gradually becomes more distant from the people and traditions she once belonged to. Perfect! I think we have enough information about her world and the character as a whole so that we can move forward with the last step, creating the final design. Now I'm making a close-up portrait of the face. This is a common practice in character concept art since it shows important visual details. I started with a rough sketch before filling in the main shapes of the face and hair. Creating a clean silhouette early on makes the coloring process much easier. Next, I added the shadows on multiple layer, following the structure of the face. If you're unsure where shadows should fall, using photo references can be very helpful. Once the shadows are in place, the forms become much clearer and it's easier to continue building up the painting. When adding color, I like to follow a basic face color map. Areas such as the cheeks, ears, and nose tend to be warmer due to increased blood flow, while the forehead often appears slightly more yellow from reflected light. Cooler tones are usually found around the eyes and in shadowed areas. These subtle color variations help make the face feel more natural and alive. After establishing the base colors, I begin rendering the face section by section, refining the features and adding detail. I also included two important storytelling elements in the design: the earrings inherited from Aira's mom, which serve as a reminder of her, and the scar left by the accident that awakened Aira's abilities. To finish the portrait, I added a rim light to create more atmosphere, depth, and visual focus. Now it's time for the full costume design. Using the exploration sketches and reference images I gathered, I can begin building the final outfit. These references help me not only define the overall shapes and silhouettes, but also to understand how different materials should be rendered. While designing, I keep Aira's story in mind. After the accident that gave her powers, in a world where they're simply inherited, she becomes an outcast, and is feared, even despised by her own people. That's why Aira, her dad, and sister are forced to live in isolation deep in the forest. Now, caught between two worlds, she no longer truly belongs to either. The gifted see her as an anomaly, while her village resents what she has become. As news of her powers spread, the raw crystals take interest. If someone can gain abilities, then the very foundation of their rule may be at risk. Aira is no longer just a village girl, she may be the key to changing the world forever. I wanted the design to reflect Aira's past, present, and future. Many elements connect her to her family and her life in the Earth District, while the shape language of her dress and corset subtly hint at the more refined clothing she will one day wear among the royal crystals. These details foreshadow the path her story will take. From a technical perspective, I followed the same painting process as the portrait. To add more visual interest, I created a traditional marker texture and applied it in Photoshop using Multiply Layer. I used these textures mainly on the cape and pants to introduce color variation and texture. The only thing left was to render the final details and bring everything together. Throughout the process, we used a combination of storytelling, visual development, reference gathering, and exploration sketches to shape the final design. By considering not only how the character looks, but also who she is and the world she lives in, we were able to create a design that feels both functional and meaningful. Hopefully, this process gives you some ideas for your own character designs and encourages you to have fun world building. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to subscribe for more content and follow me on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!